You got games on your phone?
I'm not your father. You're not my son. Those were the last words I ever heard my dad physically say to me about 2 days ago. Now, to explain, essentially, where those words came from, I'll speak in a summary, but that ties in with the topic that I have today. I told my father today, and it was one of my biggest fears for a long time. I told him today that I was no longer a Muslim. Now, of course, I was born into a Muslim community, and I never felt like I really had a choice, nor I even felt that I ever really belonged in the whole community. And religion, of course. I didn't have a lot of understanding, and no one was really willing to teach me. So it was kind of a wing it kind of approach. However, I always just felt uncomfortable with that idea. Plus, I eventually grew to kind of not hate. That hate's the wrong word I'm looking for, but essentially, I've grown to detest it. Not the community, but for the fact that I couldn't have a choice in the matter. That ties in with the topic today, and that is belief. Now, my father, he's a very old fashioned man. And by old fashioned, I mean in the sense he carries their views, religion, and just the ideas of the old. And usually, when you see people who are from overseas and they are accustomed to the old ways, they tend to be very stuck in those ways. They're not any way, shape, or form willing to compromise to newer things, nevertheless, even to understand the newer things. And that's exactly how my father is. So, mentally, I've been preparing for this moment for a very long time. But no matter how hard you prepare mentally, emotionally, you will never be ready for it. Ever. Unless you just never had any emotion in that subject to begin with. But for me, with my father, it was always a touchy subject, no matter what the circumstance. Um, so I'm not gonna lie, it broke my heart having to hear those words from his mouth. Um, and just to acknowledge the fact that I lost my father. And maybe it wasn't in the death kind of way, but I feel like it was in a worser way. And that's him choosing to leave my life. Now, I want you guys to acknowledge something. My father, he chose to do that. He chose to push me away. The last thing I said to my father was that God only knows how much I love you. And I kept on trying to tell him how much I loved him. I did all that I could. Rule number one, never, never belittle, your attempts. Never belittle and undermine your worth, especially in a situation where you feel like you couldn't do good, you didn't do good enough. Sometimes we really try our absolute best, and we tend to just cut ourselves short because of how we're feeling. And that's not the case. You know, with the conversation with my dad, it helped me realize that I did all I could. I did all I could. I was nothing but honest with him and compassionate. The rest of it was my dad's interpretations and my dad's way of handling the situation. It's kind of the same thing in real life. If your friend decided to believe a rumor, that I don't know, like you were talking crap about them, and they chose to believe the rumor over you, it's kind of living proof at that point that they put more of their trust in anything else but you. And while it may be hurtful, you need to realize that situations like that are never your fault. Situations where, how do I really word it? I'm trying to get my point across, but I feel like I'm not doing it the best way, or the way I could do it the best. So just bear with me, as you always have. Essentially, what I mean. is that sometimes, whether it's in, a conversation or like a personal relationship with someone, or even just trying your best in like a video game or something, when we try our best and if we feel like it gets us nowhere, it really tends to break us down mentally and even emotionally. I've been there many, many, many times before. Hold on. Come here. Say hello. Yeah. As I said, you need to really, accept everything for face value of what happened. Maybe this is not helping any of you particularly, but in a way, and I feel like this may be selfish, it's me giving myself a pep talk over what's happened. Because I've always dreaded for this day to happen. But at the end of the day, you can't force people to stay. You never can. I think that's what really hurts sometimes. I've had relationships with people before where, something happens and, I never talk to them again. And so a few years down the road, I think about them and it's just like, man, I wonder where they are now. I wish things never happened the way they happened. And it's just normal human regret. And I feel like all of us in some way, shape, or form have that deep down. Especially me. There's a lot of people in my life that I wish were still around, at least for just one last conversation. One last conversation. It could have been for 5 minutes. And I would have been grateful for it. However, you have to accept it at face value. You have to accept it for what it is and what happened. You can't live in the past. You never can. Because the longer you live in the past, the more you miss out on the now. Not just that, but you're doing more damage to yourself. I learned that the hard way. And I continue to try to further away from living in the past. And it's hard. It really is hard. But it's never impossible. Never is impossible. If you really want a way out, you'll find a way out, no matter what the circumstance. Even when your back's against the wall. And it may sound very impossible to you now. I know it does for me sometimes, but it's not impossible, man. I wish I had a friend. Not even a friend, but I wish I could go back in time to the younger me when I was going through a lot more than I was now. And just be there for them and reassure them that everything's going to be okay. But you can't. And I know that. And even then so, if you think about it in the bigger way of things, if you did that, you would have never been the person who you are now. And I know for me, I wouldn't want to change a thing. Selfishly, of course, I might beg to differ. But if I change just a minor thing, I could be completely altered. I could be completely different now. I may not be the biggest fan of myself. I may not love myself and everything, but I got a healthy respect for myself. And I'm working on that journey. Self-love is always something I've always struggled with. It's always been a huge problem with me ever since my mom. My mom was my biggest bully, my first bully, and I still haven't even healed over her wounds. So it just takes time. It's no guaranteed thing overnight. Change is never a guaranteed thing overnight. Ever. I wish. I really wish it was, but it's never guaranteed overnight. And you gotta acknowledge that. You gotta acknowledge that you have to be disciplined. First things first, you gotta accept that what happened, and it's not your fault. Sometimes it could be your fault, but I'm saying it in the instance if I'm saying it in the instance that it's not your fault, right? So rule number 1, do not blame yourself. Accept everything that happened for what it is. Rule number 2, you need to look at ways to move on, more so ways to heal, because a lot of times if we go through like for my example with my father, you're going to be really hurt after that experience, and it's going to really suck. You're going to have a huge wound from it. You can't ignore it. Do not ever ignore that, because if you ignore it, you're only going to make that wound bigger, and it's gonna mess you up. At least for me, like, I've left a lot of wounds open, and a lot of my problems I've ignored them, to where now I have a lot of problems now. I have like huge trust issues and a bunch of things because I chose to not heal and instead ignore the problems. Rule number 3, once you identify the problem, I know I'm trying to count right. Rule number 3, once you identify the problem, make a plan on how to fix it. Or more so in the case, once you identify the wound, identify how to heal it. Come to terms with it. You need to embrace it, man. You need to. At least for me, I definitely needed to. If these things don't apply to you, don't feel like, I'm trying to force them to you. Just trust me, I'm not. What I say may not always be the right words that you need to hear. But I feel like maybe at least for someone, at least just one person, it might be something that they need to hear. So it's a hit or miss. If you feel like I don't relate to you, that's fine. We're only human, just know that I love you all the same. I really personally feel like mental health is a huge problem. And, for example, especially amongst teenagers, it's a very, very big problem where we tend to ignore or mask our pain and our problems. And we just go on to our adult years with these things, baggage, if you will. And it gets worse. We never learn how to deal with our problems. And once the bottle starts to overflow and pops, then we cause irreversible damage, whether to ourselves or to other people. You should never leave these things unchecked. Regardless of how much you hurt in the moment, you need to sort through the baggage. You need to come to terms with things and accept them for what they are. And I know how hard it is. Maybe not in your perspective, but from my own perspective, it's very hard. There's a lot of times where it took me a long time to get over something. And even now, going through a lot, but at least I acknowledge it for what it is. And at least I acknowledge the problem. The next step is to heal and to get to the bottom of it. Anywho, this is just something quick I wanted to talk about. I feel like mental health is a very important thing. I know for me it definitely is. Because, here I am mentally preparing, and it goes to show now, no matter like how much preparing you do, you might not ever really be ready for it. Emotionally, after that happened, I was crying, man. I was crying. I was broken. I'm a lot better now, but you need to embrace the process. Don't run away from it because it hurts. I know it sucks, but you need to heal. It's more important. You need to heal rather than ignoring it and causing more damage to yourself. I love you all, man. Every single one of you. And there's some people who watch my videos who I've had bad history with, for sure. There's one specific person in mind that watches my videos that's hurt me really bad on a personal level. And I won't say names. I won't say who. I won't blurt out nothing. But just know that even you, I'm healing over the things that you've done to me. But I forgive you. I'll never forget it. I'll never forget it. And I have told you multiple times that I will never forget it. But I forgive you. And I want nothing else but the best for you. To everyone else to whom it may concern, I love you. It may not mean much. I could have just been a simple acquaintance to you at the time. I could be an ex-boyfriend. I could be a complete stranger. But I love you from one human being to another. I do these videos to get things off my chest and to reach out to people, because I understand what it feels like to not have that friend to talk to, especially where you feel comfortable enough to talk to them. And I want to be that friend to you. I want to be there for you. I don't care what race you are, what color you are. If you're 3'11" and you wear a size 12 in shoe, I don't care. I don't care. I don't. I mean, look at me, man. Like, I'm nothing special. I don't care what you bring in. I just want to what's the word? I just want to support you as best as I can, and to love you as best as I can, with no strings attached, no nothing, and just to have that relationship, man. That's it. I love you guys. I hope you guys have a great day, great night, wherever you guys are. I don't know. My time zone's probably different from yours. Then yeah, I'll catch you in the next video.